Hey, brothers. It is Saturday, 4 p.m., and it is Men's Talk on today. So grateful for all of you. It was originally slated for 1 p.m., but as many of you may know, one of our dear members, Sister Ayanna Bullock, who passed away on February 5th, her homegoing service was today. And so that kind of took precedent, but we were able to still push it back. So grateful for all of you who are part of this conversation today, all the brothers who are here and who will be showing up. Don't forget to put your name in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from. And when you join, let us know where you are from again, where you're joining us from. Also, if there are any questions, make sure that you ask them in the chat features. But again, grateful for all the brothers who are coming on, logging on, and who will be a part of this conversation today. I'm excited. This is kind of really a check-in for the brothers of FCBC and beyond, all those who are part of our family, all the men who are part of this family, FCBC family. Last year, we had few events, quite a few events, and this is our first men's talk, a men's series in this new year. So good to see Deacon Vic, Deacon Charles, Brother Ellis, and those who come. Don't forget, let us know where you are joining from. And also, as we go forward in the conversation, any questions that you may have, you can ask them in the chat. We're going to talk about a few things today, but before I get started, I'm not here by myself today. I'm here with one of my dearest, closest friends. I don't even call him friend. He's my brother. Any of you who've been at FCBC any amount of time know that every year during Visionary and Dreamers Weekend, which is a celebration at the same time of my pastoral anniversary, my friend, my brother has been here every year with us for the past several years, and that's Pastor A. Byron Coleman of the 5th Street Missionary Baptist Church in OKC. Okay.
Yes, sir.
My brother. Good to have you as always. I was thinking about who can I have on to have this conversation with.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you were able to join us on today. But look, we talk all the time, so this
all the time.
and this will be nothing new for us.
Yeah.
Again, brothers, as you join, and of course, not just brothers. Apparently, I see some other folk. But thank you, and don't forget, let us know where you're joining from. And any questions you have on this afternoon, feel free to put them in the chat as we go forward. Today, Deacon Vic said, "What's up, Pastor Colvin?" You've seen the comments over there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. So today we want to not just do an informal chat, but today in particular, we want to talk about African American men, Black men,
right,
and COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Around mental health, and also about the vaccine.
Yeah.
Especially with regard to the vaccine, there are many things that we have been talking about at FCBC about that. But I want to set the table with a few things, Byron, that can lead us conversation. In 1900, the life expectancy of Black men about 14 years less than white men. By 2019, that gap had closed to 4.5 years. So it was still, the life expectancy was still shorter than white men, but compared to 1900 to 2019, well, since COVID 2020, that life expectancy has gone down to 6 years, 6 months, 6.5 for Black men. And so it's something that we can't ignore. We know that the African American community has been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And some of the tentacles of COVID have had to also do with issues around mental health, the wellness, which I say we'll get to some of that. But when you think about this impact of COVID, we're talking strictly about African American men. When you hear those numbers about life expectancy, from 2020, dropping another almost 2 full years. From 4.5 in 2019 to now 6.5 years. And that's not in the full year, but that's just from. What are the first things that you think when you think about that?
Well, first of all, Pastor Mike, thank you for, of course, allowing me to be a part of this conversation. I know there are many other people you could have chosen, and so I'm grateful always.
Not really, not really, not really.
No. Pay homage to you without question. You're not only my best friend, you are my brother, who I really respect and admire all the time, all of our lives. To answer your question, I think in part there are several things that we need to look at. I think there are many stresses or stressors that African American men had already been dealing with. When you talk about the stress of racism and discrimination, or the stress of economics, financial, I think if you add to it, now you have this virus that disproportionately affects African Americans, men and women. And I think all of that, if you put that together, that just to me increases the level of tension, the anxiety that African American men have to deal with on a daily basis. And I think, for most Black men, Pastor Mike, there's a fear of going to the doctor.
Yeah.
There's a fear of going to get checked out at the doctor. And now you have this virus that if you catch it, everyone says, the first thing on your mind is, I'm going to die. So even if the possibility is not there, the anxiety is going to produce something in your body, which is going to be adverse. So I think when you look at those numbers, what you see to me is that for years, African American men have dealt with so many different social, psychological, emotional issues, and then add insult to injury, you add COVID on top of it. To me, it just adds another layer of stress and anxiety to Black men that fall into the purpose, Pastor Mike, has killed many of us.
Deacon Vic made a comment. This is kind of cutting through some things, but what? First of all, I have to say, brother, that today I'm representing.
Yeah,
if I can see it, this fraternity, yes.
You to the bros, man.
Pastor Coleman is also my fraternity brother.
Yes, sir.
Proud men of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. So I had to, represent today since we were, coming on. But being that, what do you think are some of the issues, and still even 2021, that we have with regard to being consistent with going to the doctor? We still have that issue. Now, before you answer that, some of you hear that question. What are some of the issues, the hang-ups that we as Black men still have about going to the doctor? I want you to put some of your responses in the chat. But Pastor Coleman, so some of you who are watching, put some of your response to that question in the chat. And Pastor Coleman, go ahead, shoot away while you think.
What they're going to put in the chat will be the exact thing that I would say. Everything that you're going to say, I would say the same thing. Many of us, my wife talks about it, have a white coat syndrome. Many Black men have a white coat syndrome. That is, when we see a white coat, our blood pressure goes up, we start feeling anxious, all of those things. So someone just put lack of insurance. That's a legitimate issue. But even for those that have insurance, it's still the fear of what I'm going to find out, right? It's what I'm going to hear. And I think that Pastor Mike produces a level of anxiety. I even experience that anxiety. Black men don't trust white doctors, no question. I think that's a legitimate issue. I have an African American doctor. I specifically have an African American doctor because maybe some incidents I've had in the past with white doctors. And so I went to get a Black doctor. My last two doctors have been African Americans. My wife went to get a Black doctor for that very reason. White coat syndrome. Yeah, white coat syndrome is a real issue in the Black community. And that goes with all of the stuff that African Americans have dealt with in the medical community for years.
Yeah. I'm gonna be, me, everybody know, bro, I'm very transparent.
Yeah.
I agree about white coat syndrome. I also agree about what they call, race-based medicine, that many white doctors are not sensitive. And we see this particularly with the amount of deaths that are happening with Black women giving birth now. At a high that we haven't seen in years. But that's real. But I gotta be also honest on this side of it. For years, I had an African American doctor. This is 100. You know this. Years misdiagnosed me. And in fact, and this was in a ragtag hospital. This is a major research hospital who misdiagnosed me and actually was giving me medication for 6.5 years that technically should have killed me. Right. So I think in part, I agree with you. I do think, and I know there's race-based medicine where there's a lack of cultural sensitivity to African-American experience. But here's what I will say. I think when it comes to matters of wellness and the matters of the spirit, that we are not as intentional to find good doctors as we are to find restaurants.
Yes, sir.
As we are to find places. We're more thoughtful about where we go eat than where we go get treated. We're more thoughtful about where we go eat than where we go to church.
Yes.
So I think we also have to, the syndrome is real and the cultural race-based medicine is real, but we also have to take ownership and responsibility for our lives and get past a lot of the myths and the stigma about doctor. You know, Deacon Randy earlier said, you know, that it was insurance issue, and that is a real issue for some of us. The fear of that. But beyond that, it is this notion. Let me press a little bit more, and I want you to speak to this. It's also this idea that the way we've been culturally and socialized, Black men have been kind of made to believe that we have to be supermen. We have to endure more than anybody else.
No question.
And withstand more than anybody else. So somehow to be able to admit pain or you don't feel well is a sign of weakness, or in some real cases, we've been in these positions economically, we can't afford to miss work. I mean, how detrimental is that to us?
Well, let me back up for a second, because I have a question for you.
Okay.
Why do you think that your doctor misdiagnosed you? And I'm curious about that. Why do you think your doctor misdiagnosed you?
Yeah, because he zoned in on one particular possible diagnosis, right? This is what happens to many doctors. They get locked in. And what happened is over the years, there was more evidence that I didn't have what he thought I had, but he never really followed the trail of the new evidence because he was locked in on his primary diagnosis. You know, there's this idea for many doctors, you know, that the God complex, you know, the inability for some doctors to admit that they are wrong, or admit that something else is going on, and that's not race-based. That's just the mentality that comes up with some doctors. But in his regard, he just locked on a diagnosis, even though evidence was showing up in my body to the contrary. He never shifted. Now I got to be 100 here. It was a white man who told me that diagnosis was wrong. Explain to me why it was wrong. And it was a white female doctor who really saved my life. So I do believe in the cultural issues and the lack of cultural sensitivity. But here's what I will say. No matter what it is, as men, as Black men in particular, with all the hangups and issues we have, we ought to be thoughtful and intentional about how we seek out medical care.
And the challenge with that becomes this: we have been socialized to take care of ourselves in a different kind of way. So when a boy is little and he falls and hurts himself, they used to say all the time, "Are you hurt or are you injured?" I never forget that. That's what Chandler's coach used to say all the time: "Is he hurt or is he injured?" Because if he's hurt, he can keep on playing. If he's injured, and I heard that all while he was coming up playing sports. And I think that type of socialization, when they get older, when men get older, young boys turn into men, inevitably we carry that into our adulthood. So the pain that I feel in my leg, I'm asking myself, am I hurt or am I injured? And and really, depending on how I feel, I'll keep pushing, knowing I need to go to the hospital. You know this, Pastor Mike. Many of the deaths that have that have taken place because of COVID took place because people started feeling bad but never sought out medical care. They kept pushing day in, day out, day in, day out. By the time they're losing oxygen and breath, now they want to go to the hospital, and it's too late. And I think that's a part of the socialization of African American men. We don't do preventive care, Pastor Mike. We don't do preventive care.
We don't. And here's the thing: I did a funeral this last year, the end of last year, for a brother, and who was in the same situation, sick. And you know, his kids are, "Dad, I'll go to the doctor." His ex-wife was like, he would say, "You need to go." "Well, I'm gonna take care of it. I'll do it tomorrow. And next thing, he died alone in his apartment.
Wow.
From COVID.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So, but there've been countless stories of Black men who have died in their homes. Because of that still reluctance. Right. But as Brother Powell just said, Deacon Powell, you know, we're prone to self-diagnosis and self-medicate, right? We're prone to do that because we want to look, I'm good. You know, that's why the title of this talk of our talk today was "You Good?" Because it's more than just thinking I'm good and so I'm fine. These are different times, especially as you get older. Look, you and I have known each other for 32 years. 32 years. And now we're in this season of our life where conversations change. And if you haven't experienced this, let me tell you how it goes. When we were young, you know, college, oh man, you know, I sent Pastor Coleman a picture of us back in college. This pastor, he was like, man, you couldn't tell us nothing.
Nothing.
You know, we would get on the phone, we would talk about women, talk about this, talk about preaching, talk about dreams and all this stuff. It was fun, right? Now we get together, our group, our friends, we talking about how many blood pressures you take.
Yeah. That was the time when we all took our blood pressure and we had whoever had the lowest blood pressure.
we listen, that's real. We was up there talking about who had the lowest blood pressure. That's when your friendship comes full circle.
Yeah.
You go from talking stuff as teenagers, and now we're here talking about who blood pressure is the lowest. Can you imagine having competition, sitting around eating, or having drama? Hey, blood, I bet you my blood pressure lower than yours. I mean, but again, it takes a shifting in the relationship.
Right.
To be able to have different conversations.
Well, Pastor Mike, I would say this even further is that we have to reset the culture, because if you don't reset the culture around men's health, then it won't go forward. Resetting the culture means the conversations about health shouldn't start when you're 21, 25. They need to start when you're 5 and 10, right?
Yeah.
When you start managing children's appetite, what they're eating, young boys, what are you eating? What are you drinking? Those are the conversations, because when they get older, they'll carry that into their adulthood. Yeah. Mike, you and I just started having conversations about health, but I remember meeting you and you sharing your condition. Yeah. And that in and of itself, we were 20 years old.
Yeah.
Think about that, Pastor. We were 20 talking about your medical condition, Mike.
Because
that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with young men.
No, but it was a situation where, for me, I couldn't hide I wasn't going to hide it, because you know very well, our sophomore year when I got really, really sick.
Right.
In a matter of 2 weeks, I lost almost 20 pounds. Had to be rushed to the hospital. I mean, so for me, I could never hide my condition because there's always something going on. But again, we were having those hard conversations, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's the evolution. And what you realize, and that's for all the brothers who are here, because we all got friends. We got friends we watch the games with. We talk about sports with, right? We talk about church. We talk about all kind of stuff. But we also, at this point in our life and before, we talk about one another's well-being.
That's right.
Right? Our well-being. What about our good friends, mutual friend, Reverend Johnson? Yes. He called one night, hit me up one night after our, at the time it was called Friday Night Live, I do meditation, and was asking me about meditation methods, right? Yeah. That's when the friendship shifts. And then when you got people you can actually want to make sure you're okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's important.
But we have to deal with this, but and as African American men, it is a fear that if I go to the doctor, that I'm going to hear something that I cannot change. Yeah. That's a powerful statement. Resetting the culture is allowing boys to cry. That's it. You got to reset the culture. Yeah. But to my point, it's going to the doctor and hearing the doctor say,
which is fear.
It's fear, man.
Which is fear. Here's my
real deal.
Here's my listen. I'm gonna be very transparent. For the past 2 weeks, I've been having some very strange headaches, and they were headaches that were very reminiscent of the headaches I was getting before I had my stroke. Wow. So this is moment I was saying, "Oh, let me take some Advil." Nah, bro. I called the doctor and said, "Listen, this was going on because I've been there." I said, "I'm getting numbness in my left hand. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking slow." He was like, "Oh, we're doing an MRI right away." Now, here's the thing, and here's what I'm speaking what you just said. The reality is, people say, "Well, we're afraid of hearing bad news." Well, let me tell you what I'm more afraid. I'm afraid of hearing no news because I'm dead. Okay, so I don't mind. We have to get to the point where we often have a tendency to find out late. I have one of our female members, one of our sisters, had a brother who died from prostate cancer. I saw Brother Ellis talk about prostate and colon check. Died from prostate cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the time he actually went to the doctor on the encouragement of his sister, right? He had been urinating blood for almost a month.
Wow. Wow.
And taking all kind of stuff over the counter. By the time he gets to the doctor, he's stage 4. He's past stage 4. By the time he gets to the doctor, he only lived a couple of more weeks.
Wow.
So think about the stages he went through.
Yeah.
He went through.
Yeah.
Before encouraged to go to the doctor by his sister. Think about all that he endured.
Yeah.
And so this notion of having to put up the front, having to take the pain is insanity.
Yeah.
It's insanity.
Yeah. That resetting the culture is a major piece, because I think, to what you said, we got to change. It starts for me with young boys.
Yeah.
And helping them understand, man, if you hurt, say you're hurt. If you don't feel well, say you feel well. You don't have to, right? Express feelings of crying without it being feminine. That's a powerful statement, Brother Allen, because I think all of us, Pastor Mike, you were socialized like that. I was socialized like that.
Yeah.
The Superman theory. You're supposed to work, right?
See, but for me, I could follow that theory, but for so long.
Right.
Eventually, my body would be like, nah,
look.
Here's what's happening.
I was in the hospital twice, Pastor Mike.
I know.
And the last time the doctor came in, and I was laying in the bed, and it was a Korean doctor, and he tapped me on the stomach, and he literally said this to me. He said, "You need to get rid of that stress, or you're going to die."
Yeah.
And I was, and I was sick as a dog. I was sick as a dog, man, from the blood clots to the stomach issues, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And you helped me with that. Because, and I think that we have to say something about that too, Pastor Mike, is men helping other men mitigate the stress in their lives, right?
Yeah.
You saying to me, yo, B, relax. You got to go away. You got to calm down. You got to relax.
Oh, let me tell you.
You helped me.
I went in on you that day. I went in on you because I was like, because I remember I said, bro, how long you been at the church?
Long time, 23 now, right? At that time, it was like 18, 19 years. Right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, so they'll be fine. They'll be fine. I learned, let me tell you, for me, it got real when I was going through a period where I was sick a lot before I got my real diagnosis. And my the trustees, this is a blessing. The trustees came to me. Some of the trustees, the chair of the trustees, some other folks said, you know, Pastor, we love you. And we want you to be here for a long time. And they said, so we would like to recommend like every other week you shut it down.
Right.
Like they was like every other week, just chill, because we know your health issues. Now watch this. I was serving at a church where leadership saw me in the hospital, in and out, hospitalized, in and out, sick all the time. They came to me and said, you need to start like every other week.
That's right.
Other month, just chill, right? B, watch this. Here's the problem. It took me 7 years to take that seriously.
Wow.
7 years to actually put that in practice. And I had a church that was caring enough about me to tell me to do that. And here I was. No, myself. Thinking this, watch this. Thinking this, that my self-worth, my value, here's the real conversation. Here's the real. Is connected to my productivity and my output. And so the more I work, people know my value. The more I grind myself to the bone, people know I know that's what I'm coming. This is all people know my value. And at the same time, you got a community who wants you to love yourself, love on you, but you don't take the step to love on your own self.
That's right.
Right? And so it was like, and that's the hard part.
Right. Like,
oh yeah. Because let me tell you what did it for me. I shared this story the other night, but I shared it with many. In 2018, August 28th, when I had my stroke, when I got better and started getting better, I sat there one day. I said, "Yo, if I would have died, the last thing I was doing was in a meeting in the boardroom at the church. That'd been the last thing. I was like, oh heck no! I ain't say heck neither. I was like, no. I was like, if I'm gonna go, let me be on a golf course somewhere.
Right.
Let me be on a beach. Let me be at a restaurant somewhere, right?
Right.
But at that moment, I shifted the attitude. It was like this. I have to be able to admit my limitations.
That's right.
I have to own my physical restrictions.
That's right.
I got to take care of myself and love myself. And guess what?
Right.
I don't care who got a problem with it.
Right. And that requires a level of courage to say that, right? Courage and faith. I remember, I hate to bring up, I remember you called me from the hospital in North Carolina. You were, remember that? You were.
It's 2012, I remember.
And you called me, and I talked to you the night before. You were in the hotel, and then that next day, you called me because you said you had blood run. And I said to myself, what is? Thought I was gonna lose my partner.
It's real, bro. That's real. We have to. And I like what people are saying. Like what we're doing now.
Right.
Is setting a potential different kind of standard. So brothers who are there, right? Like like Fred just said, we got to normalize discussions around healthcare. Right. You know, after you talk about the game.
Yeah, right.
Listen, look at that. Let's talk about the last doctor visit.
Right.
Let's talk about, have you had your prostate cancer test?
Right.
Have you had your colon screening test? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
For personally, you and I at that age, right? And I don't know what happened when I got my first prostate screen. They did it through the checking your PCA levels and blood work. Mm-hmm. Bro, I don't know why I was so nervous. I was like, no, what's going to happen? What it going to come? And I'm calling the doctor. Is everything okay? She said, we ain't got the results yet. I'm calling. They said, you're fine. I was like, what does fine mean? I'm like, what does fine mean? Don't tell me.
Right. So Dr. Fitz says to me, Sherry noticed that my right leg was swelling. And she said, well, let me call Dr. Finch. And I'm like, I was like, oh, shoot. You don't want that. She calls Dr. Finch. He said, all right, you got to go get, we got to do a test to check blood clots. So I go to this place. I get checked out for blood clots, take off your clothes and everything. So I'm like, oh, Lord, I don't want to hear. I know I need to hear it. And I said to the woman, the technician, I said, do I have clots? And this is what she said. She said, if you did, I wouldn't let you leave. You got to go to the hospital. And I said, so you're saying that I don't? She said, you do not. I got up and I realized how easy that was just to go get checked, just to make sure I was okay. And so when I talked to him later, he said, you're fine. He said, that may just be you retaining water or whatever, but it wasn't a clot. But I had so much anxiety going there.
Yeah.
But if I didn't go, like to your point, I can't complain if I'm dead.
Well, go deeper. You had anxiety going, but if you didn't go, you'd have still had more anxiety.
Exactly. Right?
Trying to think about what's wrong with me. Folks, look, let's keep real. Man, we could be punks now when it comes to hey, look, we'll punk out quick. My wife will tell you, how many times I asked her, baby, tell me to die.
Listen.
Am I going to survive this? But it's deep.
When Sherry and I got COVID, people would call and check on her, but they would say, "How you doing, Sherry?" She would say, "Fine," but then they changed their voice. How Pastor Coleman doing?
Yeah.
Right? Because they knew all my, high blood pressure, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So there was a greater concern for me than there was for her because of what I had. So,
Yeah, what? Look. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you had it, it was, you had pre-existing conditions. No matter who you are. If you had any pre-existing conditions, our other friend, Reverend Johnson, had it. Pre-existing conditions. I had it. Pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
I like to put up there, John Leslie, our producer, what Deacon Powell said, because I think that's good, that we need to plan a men's health and wellness retreat.
Yeah.
We all get checked and hang out. But I'm going to tell you, last few men's retreats, y'all found a way to have health and wellness time, clearly, because y'all went and hung out.
Hey, it's coming up on a year when we were in Montgomery.
Let me tell you something. And this is honest, I measure time during this past year and change by the retreat. Because the retreat was a church activity, last official church activity FCBC had in person.
Yeah.
Because when we all came there. Now, hold on, for all the brothers watching. Let me clown my friend for a second. Let me clown my friend.
Yeah.
Because he sure enough was clowning me.
Clowning you.
In Montgomery about sanitizing my hands, Look, every 5 minutes, I was wiping my hand. He was like, man, what you doing?
I was on you too. What you got
So
the mask for? You pull your little bag out with your gloves and you
exactly.
What are you doing?
And then all of a sudden, watch this. He was clowning me in that early part of March, making fun, talking about my gloves, my alcohol, I'm wiping down stuff in the room, right? And then about a month later, here you go. And this COVID thing serious, bro.
we all those your friends all thought you had lost your mind. We all did. We were talking about you like crazy.
Of course.
Hey, y'all, Mike's not gonna be okay.
he OD'ing on this. Nah, bro. Let me tell you, I knew what was going on. A human pathogen spreading. That don't stop.
Yeah. And it was at the hotel when we left. When we left, there's like this thing. It was at the hotel.
While we were there, Montgomery had their first case of COVID. The day we were leaving.
Right.
And then hold on. We were the last large group to go to the Lincoln Museum because we left that Saturday. They closed it down that Monday.
Yeah, they have that on the website when they started. Yeah, that's crazy.
So I mean, it's all but getting back to this piece, I think one of the greatest things we heard came from Brother Fred, who talked about you normalizing these conversations.
Yeah.
And being more intentional about it and building. See, we love the fellowship.
Yeah.
Brothers love the fellowship, right? Yeah. But the idea that part of our fellowship has to be with somebody accountability.
Yes. And accountability doesn't mean judgment. We need to add that piece.
That's good.
A lot of brothers hear the word accountability, immediately think you're being judged. You're not being judged. It's somebody loving you enough to say, hey, we want to make sure you're okay. And I was going to add to it, Pastor Mike. You always hear about women's wellness retreats.
Yeah.
His wellness retreats are few and far between, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, because we think, first of all, let me be clear. There's some things we think are reserved for women.
Right.
Listen, I like to go to the spa. I like to be pampered.
We know.
You know Look, I'm gonna take care of me. I'm gonna have me because you know why? It's because again, this thing is short. Listen, the reason why this talk was originally at 1 p.m. today.
Yeah.
And it was at 4 because we had a funeral service, homegoing service for a sister, remember, 41 years old.
Wow.
You know the husband, you met him before.
Yeah.
41 years old. And in an instant, gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
For the same things, blood clots.
Yeah.
Gone. And it's one of those reminders again that you can't take this thing for granted, man. Right.
Pastor Mike, can you ask a question for me? What does self-care look like? Let me ask you a question. What does self-care look like? Because I think you need to talk about that.
Okay. So I think self-care means knowing when to slow down first.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things first. So self-care is not just the action things we do, but also the things we begin to not do. Okay. So when I say slow down, we have a tendency to work. Grind. And we only slow down because something happens.
Yes.
So we have to be proactive and know how to check our own selves.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, you know what? Today I'm gonna do nothing. I'm gonna lay here. I'm gonna veg out. I'm gonna watch TV. I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna do things I enjoy because what we don't often do are do things we enjoy doing. Right? We put all that to the side. And we don't, and so, whatever that may be, but doing the things we enjoy to do, pouring into ourselves, that's the thing, that's one of the easiest things to do. The self-care doesn't just like knowing to slow down. It also looks like knowing how, as I use that word, because you always hear the women use the word, how to pamper yourself. Guys don't want to use these words. Oh, we don't want to pamper ourselves. Listen, you call it whatever you want to call it, right? But you got to be able to then do things where you actually love on yourself, whether it means going to get a massage, which I incorporate into my practice every other week, is massage to kind of, because we carry stress differently.
Yeah.
60 minutes or 90 minutes becomes a time to decompress, right? So it goes back to what even Deacon Vic is saying, right? Being able to admit things are too much right now. I got too much going on. I need to hit the pause button. Let me hit this pause button and reset. But maybe resetting means this weekend I ain't doing nothing. I'm saying no to folk. I'm not doing this. I am not showing up in certain spaces of expectation because I'm going to invest in taking care of myself.
Can I ask you a question? I got to ask a question in the question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle it? Your first point was slow down. How do you deal with it when you have physically slowed down, but mentally?
That's okay. Yeah,
Now you got to deal with that. Yeah.
That's what I say. That's why I smells my language. I said veg out, because what happens is, for me, people understand. Like, I'm a big movie buff. We are,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And part of watching movies for me is to take my mind out of certain spaces where I'm constantly thinking about church. I'm constantly thinking about what is, especially this past year with COVID, when we had to shift and regroup everything. I have to do things to take my mind out. Like for me, and I'm a sports fan, but I'm West Indian, so I'm a big cricket fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I got was ordering the cricket channel on cable. My wife be sick of it sometimes. She wake up in the morning, I'm on watching cricket. At night, I'm trying to watch cricket. Midnight, 3 I'm watching cricket, because that's what, for me, it's something I love to watch, and that's what I need to tune in. So it's not just slowing down, it's refocusing your energies in spaces that actually contribute to the stabilization of your mind.
Okay.
Right? So that slows you down. So even if it could be watching basketball, it could be whatever it is that pulls your mind away from the spaces that we invest so much energy in. For you and I, that's in ministry, in church, in people. Because here's what happens. And this, I'm gonna transition to the next piece of this conversation. Here's what happens. I remember when Robin Williams died, right? Yeah. When Robin Williams died by suicide, it was very traumatic for me. And I was trying to understand why. I mean, I like Robin Williams as an actor, but when he died, but what it was an article in Newsweek, I believe, Newsweek magazine, written by a friend of his about him, because everybody's writing articles about Robin Williams. Mm-hmm. He was a genius in many ways. And here's what happened. Robin Williams has brought a lot of laughter to people. Robin Williams was medicine for a lot of people. Watching him on screen, listening to things. And here's the last line of the article written by his friend. He said, the tragedy is Robin Williams had no Robin Williams to heal his psychic wounds. Wow. You hear that? What does that mean? We often don't find spaces where we're poured into. Right. Especially in this work we do, but in many of our work, right? Where we are always living with an expectation that, we have to pour out. People are coming to us to get. Yeah. Not realizing that's draining as all get out. Yeah. If you're in a position when everybody approaches you, they want something. Right. When they need something. Right. You don't realize how draining that is. Right. And then pretty soon you're on E, but then people don't care if you're on E, they still want. Right. And so you're pouring from an empty cup. Right. At times. Well, why did I say that? Because what happens then is a place that I found myself in many years ago. The combination of my physical issues that at the time seemed not like I faced death 3 very intentional times where I was almost out of here and constantly sick. And it took me into a very depressive state. It wasn't something I felt comfortable sharing, not even with you all initially, my friends. Right. And I was battling this thing silently, suffering, having to preach, having to teach, having to pray for folk, having to be there, and then not feeling like I was getting that. And on top of that, by myself, wrestling through mental anxiety and depression that was eating me up. My wife saw it because she was here, but didn't really know how to categorize it because I'd never been like this, right? And so what I had to do is one day I just became vulnerable, and I shared it for some reason with, and I don't even know why I did this day. The sister used to be our media person, because we hadn't heard her even talk like that, which let me know how at the end of my rope I had gotten. Yeah. So just one day sitting in the conference room with her, and I was just telling her, yo, I feel like I'm depressed. And I never had a kind of conversation with that before. I just started bleeding, bro.
Sure.
And she said, listen, I know somebody. I mean, it was like it was ordained for this conversation. And she gave me the name to a therapist. And I'm going to tell you, this woman saved my life.
Wow.
It takes people a while to find therapists. I was blessed that my first encounter, now let's be clear, bro, I had the walls up big time.
Right.
I was like, oh man, I do this. I counsel all the time, you know, whatever. What you want to know? Like, blah, 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 blah. But I had the walls up and I had my defenses up. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, I don't care what she do. I ain't gonna cry. So like this, you know. So it became clear how good she was. And I remember it was about maybe a year in. And she said something to me. She asked me one question, bro, that broke me. It was the kind of B where, you know, the bottom lip started. Right? And man, I couldn't stop. It was like blah. It was like I've been holding like a lifetime of stuff.
Right.
And it was like the first major breakthrough in my therapy. And man, this thing just happened. And she helped me out of a place, because what really triggered it was, and I don't think I've even told you, on one of my 40s, my sabbatical, I was in Seattle, Washington. And this is what really made me know I needed help. Because when I came back, I had this conversation with the sister. I was in Seattle, Washington. I was on the 22nd floor of this hotel, had a balcony. I got there, unloaded my clothes, chilled. I was like, oh man, this is great. And at the time, it was like October. I never forget, it was a week of Halloween. I stood on the balcony. I took a deep breath. I was like, man, this feels good. I sat there. This is what I heard. This is why I know how depression works on you. Because when you hear people commit suicide, you think it can be like that. This is what I heard. The voice said, you know, if you jump off this balcony, you could survive. That's what I heard.
Wow.
If you jump, you'll survive.
Wow.
Go ahead and try. That's what I heard.
Wow.
And immediately I felt some different force pull me back into that room. I remember falling on the hotel floor in fetal position, crying, weeping, bro, because I did not know what had just happened to me.
Wow.
I also was overwhelmed by this force, this power that pulled me in that room. And for the rest of the time, I was there for 7 days. I never went near that door to the balcony again.
Wow.
And that let me know something is wrong.
Right.
Something was wrong. And we came back. So what are some of we know the health thing, and I'm sure they're similar, but what are some of the challenges you think, and I have my own ideas, I talk about this and talk about this ad nauseum for 5 years at BBC, that makes it hard for us to admit the mental part as men. That it makes it hard for us to admit that strain.
But it goes back to your point about being a Superman, because most men don't know how to expose themselves vulnerably, right?
Yeah.
Vulnerability is a major point. If I show you that I'm weak, you may perceive me as being totally weak instead of me being acutely weak. I might be weak in that area, but that doesn't mean I'm totally weak. The perception is, in many cases, Pastor Mike, depression, anxiety, fear, all of those are mental conditions. I think those are developed for a myriad of reasons, financial, social, economic. I mean, it can be all a myriad of reasons. I don't think men are willing to admit that there's something mentally wrong, that there's something. For you to be able to relegate that means you had to have an encounter with yourself.
Yeah.
To do that, I think most men are not willing to face themselves. It's very difficult to look yourself in the mirror and admit that you're not well, that something is off. And I think we've normalized that in our community, right? We normalize that. So if somebody is mentally unstable for whatever reason, we normalize it in the community. Let's say, oh, that's just how they are, right? That's the way they're being. We never say, you know what? Maybe there's something deeper. We never want to engage in that, especially when it comes to mental health. If physical health is a problem, mental health is twice the problem.
10 times, because there's no stigma. Here's the old adage: there's no stigma to physical. If I break my arm, nobody gonna look at me funny when I go to the hospital. But if I say I feel like I'm losing it, we don't want to be regarded as being crazy. And you said it. It's the normalization of trauma.
Yes.
Normalization of trauma.
Yeah.
and the normalization of certain behaviors we've become accustomed to as a traumatized community.
Right.
Right. I remember when I was a kid coming up in my town, there was this brother, man, every day you see him walking up the main street. He was walking fast. I mean, like just power walking every day. But he looked strange, power walking. Some days he had torn up clothes, and we used to call him Walking Willie.
Right.
Yeah, right. Lo and behold, one day Walking Willie killed himself. Ran right in the middle of the street, ran into oncoming traffic. Boom, gone. And we know, that's just Walking Willie. That's Walking Willie. That's Walking Willie.
Right.
Man, we're no big deal.
But Mike, that begins in our families.
Yeah.
It starts in our families. We know the people in our family that have mental illnesses. And we brush that off as, oh, that's just how they are. Instead of trying to seek help for them, because at the end of the day, they have become functional in their instability, right?
Yeah.
And as long as we see them as functional, we don't think they need help. That's like somebody who's an alcoholic. As long as they're functional around us, we don't see the problem. But the problem becomes, we know that at the end of the day, there's something mentally wrong with them. Men sometimes.
Yeah. No, I saw Deacon Powell talking about, we think sometimes the stigma is permanent. It cannot be held. And that's not true.
Yeah.
Part of the reason for, we opened up the mental health facility, the Hope Center, was to destigmatize mental health and demythologize health issues. But here's the thing. The majority of the people who take advantage of our free service are women still. Black women, not men.
Yeah, you said that. I'm gonna tell you something. When you started the Hope Center, I started at Fifth Street about a year and a half ago, a thing called Jesus and a Therapist, where once a month on Wednesday night, no Bible study, I'm not doing that. I bring a therapist in to talk about different issues of mental health. That means once a month, I'm bringing somebody in. I'm gonna get my own Hope Center one day, but I brought a therapist in. So I bring men therapists in, African American males, females in, who are clinical psychologists, therapists in. And it's funny, there are people who won't come to Bible study, but they came to that.
They'll come to that, yeah.
Come to that. And I started. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I started realizing people were beginning to thank me for doing that, because it was in a group setting, right, which was safe. Because if I'm in a group setting, you don't know what I'm dealing with. This is Wednesday night. So I put it on the guise of Wednesday night. So if you came, nobody knew what you were dealing with. But I talked to the counselors afterwards, and each of the counselors that I had said, because they gave their information, that the majority of people that showed up on Wednesday night contacted them afterwards.
See?
That's powerful. That was powerful. That's the
What we find now is the reason why I told that story of suicidal ideations from the pulpit one Sunday.
Wow.
Right? I shared that story in the pulpit and talked about it.
That freed a lot of people, brother.
Yeah, because it did. That was the exact word. It liberated some folks. Listen, if Pastor Mike can talk about this or went through that, well then, hey, what's the issue now? Let's go. And that was the reason we started talking about it. Like, we don't understand. You don't have to have mental health issues. We are among a traumatized people.
Come on, man.
And we have normalized trauma and traumatic behavior in our communities.
Come on.
So trauma-based issues, trauma-based behavior, trauma-based communal manifestations, all that comes from these deeply experienced trauma as a people, oppression, right? And the psychic fracturing.
That's my stuff.
Oppression.
Come on.
Is what the issue, and we don't want, we act like we okay, or well, no, their family just like this, or he didn't have a mother and father. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the psychic.
Come on.
Live with that.
Right.
Live with that.
The legacy of historical trauma, because that's my stuff. The legacy of a historical trauma runs pervasively in our community, to the degree that this is what I do. We pass it on from generation to generation to generation to generation. We pass on trauma. The book that I use is Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, which talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, the things that we pass on to our children. I use this example. I use this example when I do this, and I give a lecture on this to people that are counselors or work with kids. When a black parent goes to the store with their child, when a white parent goes to the store with their child, and when a black parent, when a white parent goes to the store with their child, they tell their child, come on, let's get out the car, let's go in the store. When a black parent gets out the car, before they get out the car, there's a litany of things they tell that child.
Don't ask for nothing.
Don't
ask for nothing.
Don't touch nothing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so when the child gets in the store, there's this element of, if I touch that, something bad, there's a trauma that's associated with it, right? Yeah. When a white child takes something off the shelf, the white parent puts it back. But when a black child takes something off the shelf, it is all hell is getting ready to get. You know that, Pastor Mike. You're going to get beat. You're going to get whooped. That is a form of trauma that we pass down from one generation to the next generation, especially when it comes to parenting black kids.
And I'm gonna stay with that word. I like what Deacon Vic just posted about what have we talked about, that freedom that happens when you start talking about it. But I want to be clear. Here's how you churchify that. in a negative way. Yeah. We start talking about generational curses.
Yeah.
No, get that out there, because it's trauma. We have generational trauma, and you can't break the trauma by talking about we're gonna have a prayer meeting.
No.
We're gonna have a prayer meeting and we're gonna tarry on this and get the oil.
No.
Trauma is something that has to be dealt with, right?
Clinically.
Right. So that, yes, thank you for flashing that across the screen, John. Our crisis text line, FCP.
Awesome.
Right? But I think that becomes, really, yeah. This brother Andre, suicide was stigmatized in my church growing up. One-way ticket to hell. But I went through my own suicide journey. Hell wasn't on my mind. Just absolutely.
Wow.
You can't put that no better, Andre.
Wow.
Church, all that crazy. Oh, if you going to hell. So the church has participated also in people not being transparent about their mental health issues, because, as he just said, or how about this? Oh, he has a demon.
Right. Well, right? The church inflicts its own trauma. That's what.
Oh, God, don't let me go there. That have a whole nother conversation. Right. I just had a conversation on NPR last week about religious trauma and helping people navigate around religious trauma. But you're absolutely right. Like the church, when you talk about, well, this person got a demon. No, it's like when you go to biblical scholars, right? And when you go in the Old Testament, now these are primitive people in the New Testament, right? We forget that.
Yeah.
Even though we love the Lord and all, Jesus, like, we're hanging out with us in 2021. This is like first century Jerusalem and Judean Valley.
Yeah.
And we about the man with the son who had demons. And the demons would throw him in the fits. He would throw him at the mouth and roll him around. That's called a seizure.
That's a seizure, dog.
That's a seizure. Ain't a demon, but the primitive minds.
Right.
That's a demon. But here's what Grandma said: when you know better, you do better. So that's not a demon that young boy had. The young boy probably had epilepsy.
Right.
And had seizures. But back in the days, what did you say? Well, it's a demon. Oh, that's the devil. Right. Oh, he's possessed. Oh, she's possessed. Right. We know better now. We've graduated from that. We don't sit around talking about the sun stood still. It's called a solar eclipse.
Right.
Like we get all these things.
It's good for the narrative, but it's not true.
It's not true. But here it is. It was true. Right. And as much as that was the only way they had to explain, that was accessible to them.
That's right.
We have different ways of explaining now. It doesn't mean we're less spiritual.
That's right.
It's just better. We have better ways of explaining. We have more access to more knowledge that people 2,000 years ago didn't have. Like you was dying. Listen. What we call a cold, people died from.
Right. But we have to challenge, Mike, the idea for many church folk, it's safer to stay in that first century idea, right? Yeah. Rather than be exploratory of now and do your own investigation.
Well, that's where we come in. Right. I think that's why we have to lead different and shape the people different. That's as far as in terms of men, I think having these kind of conversations, let me show this. Having these kinds of conversations, being transparent, encouraging brothers to have a circle of friends who don't just care about hanging out, but care about your well-being. You know what it also does indirectly? It also creates a new environment of how men engage church.
Yes. Yes.
Right? How men engage church.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know today, Saturday. I intentionally put this on Saturday for a number of reasons. Why? Some brothers at home right now who watching basketball, college basketball or whatever. No, break that. That's going to be there. But these conversations, right, these are critical for our well-being. What good is it, to talk about, well, we're going to go have sports when you can't enjoy it because you got all this stuff on your mind, all your sick.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's something we don't often want to talk about.
Right.
And again, here's the thing. Some people say, well, maybe you need to get new friends. Well, maybe. But how about this? Maybe the friendships just need to evolve.
Right. And for some people would say grow up.
Yeah.
Sometimes as simple as grow up. We can't continue to have elementary conversations when we should be well beyond that, having honest and open conversations. Once again, not to judge, but just to simply be accountable to one another.
Yeah. I like what Brother Darren said. When someone comes across your mind, spirit, just call. Be personal again. It changes people's. Just simple things, man. One of our friends, when all this stuff was happening in Texas, my wife's family, some of her family lost power and all that. And I reached out to Tim Sloan, one of my Morehouse brothers.
I just texted him today. I
was like, bro, you good? Something like that, man. Y'all go how you hit. The day I come here, just got power the night before.
Wow.
Right? Wow. So it's just little things like that.
Right.
To the question, is that trauma the result of seeing the world from the perspective of limited resources, limited access to resources? No. That trauma comes from being beat and stolen. And socialized in a way made to feel inferior of human. That stuff doesn't disappear. Limited resources, limited access, that comes with all of the oppressive structure.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
We're living with the trauma that white supremacy built.
Yeah, no question. Right? And we perpetuated it. This is what I said. We perpetuated it. Internalize it, perpetuate it in our families, in our communities, in our schools, with our teachers. It's all over. So much so that, and this is my thing, Pastor Mike, so much so that we've thrown away our own indigenous understanding of what it means to be in community, and we've adopted a colonialistic view of being individualistic. And that's a problem, because the indigenous view of our people is we're in community. We take care of each other. But when you adopt a colonialistic view, you look out only for yourself. That's a difference.
Yeah, it is. And that's what he said. It's building a different kind of community. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, I want to get to the point when we do these men retreats that we got 100 and 200 brothers coming because we feel that investment, that need to fellowship and grow together. But that's real, man. You just hit it. It's the mentality that we lost because of deeply entrenched racism and racist structures.
Yes.
And we lost that sense of community and caring for one another. But and it also created mentalities that operated invisible. I'm gonna give you a classic example of visible lines. We got folk in our communities who will harass folk. Keep it real. We know crime is in our communities. We know crime is prevalent. Mm-hmm. But then some of the people who commit those acts in New York City won't take that crime downtown or certain places,
right?
Because there's these invisible lines, these boundaries psychologically set up. Don't do that there. But in your own space, we can act out this way.
Right.
All that is part of the trauma inflicted upon people of color that manifests itself in our communities, right? So
I have to add one point, Pastor Mike. What you put together last year around this same time for so many men in Montgomery was so healing.
Yeah.
When our friend, Ed Lawson, my member, was totally transformed. He had never been in a conference and seen men cry. Yeah. He had never been there. And so upon coming back to Oklahoma City, he shared with me, and I know other men that were in that space. That was just, Pastor Mike, it was everything, man. Brothers felt safe. One, it was out of New York. So I know that was a safety in that. It was to be in a space around other brothers. Who some they didn't know, some they did. And I think it was just all, Pastor Mike, and I know you talked about it, but when we went through the first memorial, just the emotions of brothers, just to see, that was cathartic.
Yeah.
For some brothers, Pastor Mike, that was to be able to confront that was just, and so I commend you if I could go to Montgomery every year, bro.
I told my wife once we can go, we're going there. I want her to see that.
I'm my boys.
Let me tell you what I'm grateful for is that the men, I'll say the men at FCBC, because FCBC for us now like kind of like global, right? But the men there, not the retreat last year before, because last year, of course, we was in Montgomery. Year before that, we were in Savannah. But before that, year before that, we were at a retreat center in New York. Mm-hmm. Man, we had one of the most powerful encounters, and some of the brothers who are here, if you were there this year, and I'm gonna describe the situation, you could chime in and just comment that you were there. But if y'all remember, we had a men's retreat, and there was a man who was there. We had a moment where we were all being very open, and he was talking about the hurts and pains. Now, there was a story of a car accident in Pennsylvania, I think it was Pennsylvania, and in the car accident, there was a mother and her children died instantly in a car accident. Van. It was this brother's daughter and grandchildren. It had just happened.
Wow.
And he came to the men's retreat. And when we realized it, when I tell you, B, the men literally rallied around this man.
Wow.
Like in camp, this brother. When I tell you we prayed, and yes, that's so powerful. It was, James. It was Vernon's friend, one of Vernon's, and Vernon was the brother whose wife we buried today.
Wow.
And he came, and man, it did so much for him. I mean, brothers were crying. It wasn't even our daughter, our grandchildren, but it was a powerful moment.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that to me captured what healing communities of men can do.
Yeah.
To be in solidarity, to be present, to show up. I mean, there were brothers crying and hugging, praying for one another. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, there were other brothers who came out and said things that were going on with them. And all of a sudden, you saw different prayer circles pop off. And here we're praying for one another. That is to me the essence of what we can do when we take down these falsely constructed walls of masculinity,
right?
Actually erode our humanity.
That's right.
And I want to go with something Brother Scott said. He asked the question, being, how do you break that trauma when so many view the world through white standards and white acceptance? Well, hey, let's be clear. That has been how we've been socialized.
Right.
And you begin by doing it. It ain't going to happen overnight. You're not all of a sudden going to take yourself out of the white gaze overnight.
That's right. Right?
But you got to be real. And once you recognize, that, and don't worry about so many, you got to recognize yourself.
That's right.
Yourself.
That's right.
How that white gaze has shaped you, and begin to construct narrative and habits that are contrary, antithetical to that gaze that has defined you.
That's right. When you start to reset the culture begins to change. It starts with you. It starts with you, and you also challenging those in your closest circle. You challenge their colonialistic views. You challenge their views of how they behave, act, and talk in light of the white gaze. You challenge those things, because here's the thing. If you want your circle to be better, you got to be better.
Come on, say it again, doctor.
Come on. If you want your circle to be better, you got to be better. It starts with you. And so you can't, and I deal with this all the time. I deal with it at church. I deal with it. We have to break the shackles of colonialism as it relates to our health, as it relates to our community, as it relates to our mental and physical health. We got to break those images of what they think we need to do, instead of it's embracing our own indigenous values of what we need to do.
Yeah. This thing, sister, society makes men believe they can't be vulnerable. You're right.
Yeah.
But you know how we break that?
Yeah.
By those who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Those who can be transparent.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. Church is a place that's still trusted in our communities for the most part.
Come on, man.
A lot of this work we can unpack and deal with in our faith-based institutions.
That's right.
But again, someone said earlier, a lot of our colleagues got to let go of ego in this whole I know everything, or I got to be strong in everybody. I got to be the man in the congregation. I got to be no, you get no credit. You get no trophy for participating in your own physical and mental demise.
Come on.
You get no credit for that.
Come on.
Right? You get no credit for that. You don't get credit for that at all.
Right.
And perpetuating destructive myths.
Come on. That's where I was going. And get delivered from preaching and teaching through white colonialistic eyes. I hate to say that, Pastor Mike, but I got to say that. You've got to preach at some point in time. Your preaching, teaching, your pastoring has to be for the people, for those people you pastor, for those people you preach to, for them to be liberated and to be free.
Yeah. And this guy's trying to answer what Victor said. But here's the thing: when I preach and I teach, I always talk about the carpenter.
Yes.
And I put to you like this.
I love it.
I put to you like this: that Jesus was a poor Jew.
Come on.
Living under imperial rule by the Roman Empire.
Yes, sir.
And what he knew in if you look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke in particular, look at the teaching. Yeah. It is an attempt to liberate the mentality of his people.
Come on.
From being constantly defined by Roman terms.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And also to help that liberation is to know that they're viewed differently by God. So you get reimagining God.
Yes, sir.
And also reimagining themselves.
Come on.
So they can break free from the gaze of empire.
Come on.
This is what you do. So if you constantly, as you said, Pastor Coleman, see yourself through the white lens, if you constantly see yourself through the white gaze,
right?
Even when there's no change, you go looking for change to put on, to hold yourself captive.
Come on.
You have to be able to reimagine yourself in ways that free you. Right. That's why I keep saying one of the freest black men in the past 50 years we've seen, one of them, tons of them, was James Baldwin.
Yes, sir.
An openly gay black man
who
did not care about what white people thought about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And in fact, made it clear, if you call me a nigger, that's not my burden to bear. Right. Because you needed to construct a nigga, not me. Right. I love his line. He said, because I'm not a nigga, I'm a man. Right. So if what his classic line, if what you call me or say about me is a reflection of how you feel about yourself, well, here's this question. Well, who's the nigga? Who? Right. And I think so I like the person where Jesus said, there's power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain. Yeah. You may be power in the name to break every chain, but if you don't see a therapist, them chains are gonna stay on your mind and your back and everywhere else. So Pastor Mike, I gotta do this because you said it. So when Jesus is in the synagogue and there's a woman bent over double, the text started out with she was a woman that was bent over double. Jesus breaks all of the paradigm in this synagogue by saying she's not a woman bent over double. He calls her daughter. Yes. Which could mean that her condition was not necessarily physical; it was emotional and mental. Because as well. Thank you, sir. Now he includes her in the family. He shows her this is how God sees you. The people in the synagogue see your issue. God sees you as a daughter. He changes her whole narrative. That's what you're saying. And I think that's what the church has to do with people who need mental health, physical health. If we're not helping people change their narrative in light of all that they have to see and deal with in the world, then we're missing the mark as a church. Yeah. So listen, we could go on and on for this. I mean, I'm always mindful of time. We try not to go past an hour and 15 minutes on our max. So know this, brothers, part 2 is coming real soon. Part 1 officially is coming. Part 1 is coming officially. Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna make sure I get Pastor Coleman back again next month. We're gonna do this next month. That's my word. We're gonna get Pastor Coleman and talk about some other topics. Today, it was good to talk about issues around men's physical health, mental well-being, and we'll continue to do this. But I think it's important we have these conversations. Yeah, and we also invite other brothers we know. Because we know there's other brothers who could benefit from these conversations as well. So I'll be there with Pastor Coleman from 5th Street. He'll be back here for FCBC next month, brothers. And when we see this advertisement, make sure we spread the word. Spread the word about this, because these are the conversations that will liberate, that will empower, that will lift, that will transform. Yeah, and like going back to what this person said, you know, we were told that men were not supposed to cry. Myth, lie. If you're a human being, that's called emotion. And to sit there and not cry is becoming inhumane.
That's right.
So all of that, we're going to debunk all that next time. So again, listen, my man, my dude, my brother, man, much love. Love you, man.
Love you, Doc. Love you, Pastor Mike.
Yeah, man. Thank you for joining us today, and to all of you. And thank you. And even the sisters, I saw you. Thank you for supporting and coming in, and hopefully you'll take some of these gems and talk to some of the brothers in your life as well.
Yeah.
But listen, family, until we meet again in this format, next month we're going to come back for Men's Talk series.
Yeah.
But make sure to do this, brothers. Always check on one another.
Yes.
Look out for one another.
Yes.
Transcend those boundaries that are shaped by ego and insecurity, and truly be your brother's keeper.
That's right.
That's what it means. Love on one another, honor one another, encourage one another, lift one another, and hold one another accountable.
Yes, sir.
Right? So, my brothers, until we meet again, everybody be well, be blessed, stay encouraged. And I'm sending this message to Pastor Coleman so you can see it. All right. So anyway, until next time, family, don't forget, there's 3 things you got to always do. We live, we love, and we serve. Peace and blessings. We out.
Peace.